When a bloke has been reported a record 25 times, it's certain that he's going to be remembered more for his indiscretions than for his exploits. Sadly, that's the story of David Rhys Jones, an exquisitely talented player who won a Norm Smith medal. Welcome, Rhys.
Welcome, yeah. Thank God I won that Norm Smith.
Well, does it ever trouble you that your reputation, and in your own terms, that you're a member of the Hall of Shame rather than the Hall of Fame?
No, not really. I mean, look, that's you live by what you do out in the football field or in life in general. So, you know, I made some mistakes out there, and you probably suffer for down the track, but it's not a worry. I mean, things wouldn't change too much.
Lots of people say that you started too many fights for a bloke who couldn't really fight. Is that a fair assessment or not?
Yeah, I didn't take a backwards step, but I don't know, I could hold my hands up. Yeah.
All right, we'll get to that later on. I want to go back to the start of this fascinating journey. You started South Melbourne as a 17-year-old, played your first game in round 6 against Melbourne. Started on the bench?
Yeah, come on at half-time.
Yeah.
So
finished with, do you know how many possessions you had that day?
No, I remember kicking a couple of goals in the last quarter and we won the game, so...
You had 19.
That's not bad.
19 and a half a game of footy.
Yeah. I didn't have an opponent, and I think Jared Healy may have been my direct opponent.
Jared Healy?
I'll
remind you of that.
But Ron Barassi was coach, and I don't think there was any respect shown to a young skinny kid out there on the wing, but good enough. We won the game. It was good. One
of your supporters was quite impressed with your start, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, I was quite happy. I mean, I walked into the rooms after the game and a bloke walked up and he said, that was fantastic, and he shook my hand, and when he pulled his hand away, there's a $50 note in it, and I'm thinking to myself, how good's this? This is unbelievable.
How many packets of Winfield Blues could you get with $50 then?
Probably quite a few, I reckon. And
did you give yourself every chance of being as good as you could have been? I mean, we joke about the grog and the fags. I know there was a different culture at that time, but do you think you gave yourself the opportunity to be as good as you might have been?
Well, we did. We did back in those days. You know, I mean, it wasn't performance enhancing, which is the buzzword at the moment. You know, it was the opposite. I mean, it was, you know, drinking and smoking, and that was part and parcel of football. And look, to be perfectly honest, it was a great life. On and off the field, it was a terrific life we had, and you wouldn't swap it for quids.
All right, let me take you to the Waverley Car Park, 1988 Grand Preliminary Final Day. You pull up in your car alongside Gary Lyon, who's playing for Melbourne against Carlton that day. You're chuffing away on a fag. Gary Lyon says, I know how I'm going to play on this bloke today. I'm going to just run him until he falls over. It must have been a huge disadvantage. So you would have probably come off 10 or 12 cigarettes at that point, would you?
Well, I don't know how many I had before the game, but I normally have my last one about 20 minutes before I run out, and I had one as soon as I got off the ground. But and I'm off them now anyway.
Yeah,
so that's
good boy, well done.
Good thing.
We were going to get to that, yeah.
But look, I mean, I had blokes like Craig Starcevich, who, you know, every time I played on Stars, he'd be saying, how many smokes you had this week? And, you know, look, I just said to him, look, you can run, but you can't hide out of you.
So you get him in the third or fourth
quarter?
Well,
you catch him eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the Norm Smith medal, I mean, it enshrines you in footy history. 1987 Grand Final. Carlton's playing Hawthorn. You go to centre-half back and play on the great Dermot Brereton. Now, we'd only known you as a winger to that point. What was the background to that?
Oh, you'd have to ask Wolsey that question. That was a move that he decided. I'd played a bit on the back line that year and did okay, but it was a surprise to me. I saw it on the Thursday night. You walk into the players' room and you see it up on the board, and picked a centre-half back, and I thought, well, you know, great. That's a great challenge, and my role that day was to make sure Dermot had very little influence on the game, and look, I had some wonderful guys back there. I mean, I had Tommy Elvin and Peter Dean and Sauce and Mick Kennedy and Ian Aiken. I think that was our back line, and they'd cover a lot for me. I wasn't the tightest backman out there.
The Norm Smith came 12 months after you played in your normal familiar role on a wing on Gary Ayres in the previous year's Grand Final, and he won the Norm Smith.
Yeah, that's right. I had a pretty good second semi, and probably one of the better games I'd played over my career, and because of that, they threw Ayresy onto me, and I thought that'd work in my favour, but it was just one of those days where Hawthorn were a bit all over us, and the ball didn't sort of bounce the right way, and Ayresy won the Norm Smith, and so Monday at the
What was your nickname Monday?
Well, on the Monday, Mad Monday, I was called Smithy. So.
Mad Mondays, Rhys, were they as mad as we've been led to believe? Were you blokes out of control, or was it just like a long, extended bout of drinking?
No, we were pretty well out of control and done some stupid things. I mean, it was just a day we just took over the pub, and whichever pub we happened to be in, look out.
Did they close the pub off to the rest of us on those days? I mean, would you have exclusive use of whichever pub you decided to wreck?
I don't think anyone would want to come in. And it didn't take long, it got pretty messy at times, but it was part and parcel of footy back then.
The 87 grand final was pretty hot, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a stinker.
More ways than one,
no,
it was that hot that Michael Tuck wore short sleeves, didn't he?
And that just about says it all. But I remember at one stage looking up into the crowd, and it was a cricket crowd.
Here's probably your proudest moment of your footy career?
Well, that's it. That's what you play footy for. It's to carry that cup around at the end of the day, and takes a lot of hard work, but we're lucky enough to get there.
Your career was divided between South Melbourne / Sydney and Carlton. What are your memories of the time at South?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I was grateful, for the opportunity that I was given there, and I was one of the first players to move up to Sydney. I was right behind that move, and looking forward to it. And it was unfortunate the VFL weren't as supportive like they are now with the expansion teams. We got promised the world and given an atlas basically. So that was tough days, but I think if you look back on those days when the Swans played on those Sundays up in Sydney, we won a few matches and beat some. We had some big scalps in those
Massive
days.
TV audience, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And even when you come back to Melbourne, it was. People would say, "Oh, Barry for Collingwood," but the Swans are my second team. I love watching them, and I love watching you guys on a Sunday. So it was. Yeah, we created a bit of our own.
Why did you come back?
Well, basically, they sacked some of the administration. Greg Miller, who you mentioned before, and Dean Moore and a few others, they sacked them and put some VFL cronies in there. And the first thing they said then, I was in the second year of a three-year contract, was that anyone who was getting a pay rise any more than they got the year before weren't going to be getting it for the next year. So I had a quick chat to them, and they said it's right across the board. No one will be getting a pay rise. They'll be on the same rate as they are in 1984, so it's time for me to move on.
Do you remember what the numbers were in that contract?
I think it was around about 70 a year. So I was going from, about 30 to 70.
30 to 70?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which did happen. I mean, if you leave a club,
That's
you're going to get paid
increase,
more.
Rhys.
Well, it was. Well, I would have stayed at the Swans for 40, and that was the silly thing about it. I was going up $10,000, and they weren't going to pay it.
They weren't going to pay it?
Yeah.
Wow. What weight were you when you started playing?
I was about 10.5 stones, so I think that relates to about 62, 63 kilos these days, around that.
Tell me your mindset when you came into VFL football. I suspect you were a wild kid, were you?
Not really, no, I wasn't a wild kid at all. Look, I think Lou Richards coined it the best, and a couple of things Lou said. He said I had white line fever, and a different person must have crossed a white line. But he also said when Rhys Jones gets to the football ground, he puts his head in the locker and takes a pumpkin out and puts it on. And I reckon that's a bit more accurate.
But you did get into a lot of skirmishes, shall we say, didn't you?
Yeah. Look, in round 1881. I think I got reported 5 times in the one match, and I gathered a bit of a reputation from that game, and I missed the last 4 games of that season. I actually got 4 weeks for hitting the runner.
I remember. Was that against Richmond?
Against Melbourne. Yeah.
Against Melbourne.
Happened to be Norm Smith's son too. So.
Peter
ironically,
Smith.
Ironically, but one of those things.
What was the lead up to that? I mean, that's 5 times in one game's.
I'd had a real good first quarter, and I don't know what was said at quarter time to the Melbourne boys or whatever, but Brent Croswell was pretty intent in
he knee you in the head,
he knee me in the head. And,
do you think he might have meant that, Rhys, or not?
Oh, definitely. He changed direction to make sure he got me. Yeah. So, look, it was one of those things, and there were a couple of all-in blues after that. Crackers Keenan was involved, and a few other.
Do you think they tried to work you over because you were a kid and you might have been able to be intimidated?
I don't know what their intention was, but I think the intention was to take me out of the game at that stage. But it was it sort of degenerated the match a bit after that, and so I got in a bit of trouble. But the repercussions of that were from other teams and coaches was that I could be sucked in easily.
Yep.
So they'd send blokes out, they'd be standing on your toes, pinching you. It drove you mad after a while. And
did you think the umpires victimised you? No, I asked that question because you were reported 25 times. Your suspensions, though, total only 22 matches. So obviously the people at the tribunal were more sympathetic to David Rhys-Jones than the umpires were.
Well, a lot of times you'd go into the tribunal and the tribunal members would see that you've been whacked first and you're retaliating sort of thing, and so they'd ask the question to the umpire, well, why didn't you report him first, and then, why are they both up here? So there was a little bit of sympathy out there, and, they used to dress me up a bit.
You
like
put that altar boy face on,
the choir boy sort of look, so,
One of the blokes who was reported for hitting you, Rhys, was a bloke called Andrew Demetriou. Do you remember that incident?
I don't really remember it, but I remember getting him off. And I helped a lot of them get off.
Yeah.
Even
you're well practiced at it. Yeah.
Well, there were a couple of times I'd walk into the tribunal and have to remember which side of the table to sit on, whether I was a guilty or innocent party.
You were the guilty. Well, you were the charged party 22 times, or 25.
25
and you were the victim 17. Yeah.
So I didn't plan going out on Monday nights.
You're a badge of honour for Andrew Demetriou. I mean, because in his own words, he was an outside player, but when history says that he whacked the legendary David Rhys-Jones, I think he's pretty proud of that.
I'm pretty sure I got him before that, so it would have been a pain.
Well, he did say to me, he said that you both lied at the tribunal.
Well, that's what you did. That's what you did in those days, and I always tried to protect the bloke because you never knew when it might come back to haunt you.
Now, you say you always tried to protect the bloke that hit you.
Yeah.
I want to remind you of an old foe of yours and later teammate, Greg Williams. Did you lie to try to protect him?
No, I don't think I lied that time.
No. That must have been the low point of your career. The exchange, you and Diesel, up at Sydney.
Yep.
Let's just remind you of what happened that day, Rhys. There's number 2 for the Swans,
yep.
G. Williams, coming in with a big right hand that didn't travel all that far but landed on your jaw, right, and broke it.
Yeah, it broke in 2 places, and I continued to play on. And
why did you do that? Was that just that code that if you're on the footy field, knowing unless you were carted off unconscious, you stayed there? Is that right?
Oh no, I knew I was going to miss about 7 or 8 weeks, and I was going to make sure he missed about the same. So,
but had you not hit him first?
Look, he had put it this way: he had a bung shoulder before the game, and my jaw was intact.
Well, he finished with a bunger shoulder, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. But look, there was an all in blue, and Diesel. Look, and people often say, the controversy about that. The thing that disappointed me with Greg Williams, who was a great footballer, is that he'd snipe, but when it come to a one-on-one, he wasn't too keen, and he whinged and moaned umpires. So yeah, that was the only thing. It was, if you want to dish it out, you've got to go one-on-one at times.
But I'm sure, look, he was very good with his hands, Diesel, wasn't he? In more ways than one. So he didn't.
My jaw felt that.
Yeah, exactly. Now that day, Diesel sat in that very chair a couple of years ago and recounted that story and said that he went to full forward, I think, after he hit you.
Yep.
And he saw you wobbling your way down the ground into his vicinity.
Yep.
And
I went looking for him.
Yeah, exactly. And he sort of said to himself, Rhys, don't do this. And he hit you again, didn't he?
No, I actually got reported for hitting him after that. But I was a
you've
little
gone
bit
there
wary.
looking for trouble with a broken jaw.
Oh, yeah, I went looking for him. And the siren blew pretty quickly, and they reported me. And I basically went into the huddle. Jezza had a bit of a go at me for being undisciplined and so forth. But I played the second quarter. I was, and it's probably just as well Greg didn't come out in the second quarter, because I would have done something stupid. It was probably the only premeditated that I would have done something.
Like?
Well, how do you make another bloke miss 8 games? It's got to be pretty severe, doesn't it?
Yeah, so you would have tried to do the same thing. Yeah.
Whichever way, yeah.
Did you have any bad blood? Was there any bad blood between you two before that game?
Oh yeah, look, he'd sniped a few of our players along the way. So and that was in the back of my thoughts. It all started with I think Terry Thripp hit Peter Dean behind the play, and back in those days, it was an all in blue sort of blokes coming from all directions, and that's when I was watching where Williams was, because he was dangerous out there. And
did you watch him?
Blokes. Oh yeah, that's why I bulldogged him into the ground, and
and that's when he cracked his shoulder. Yeah. As fate would have it, Rhys, when Diesel leaves Sydney, he joins you at Carlton.
It's going to be hard to get him now, isn't it?
But was it frosty? I mean, did you welcome him to Princes Park, or did you have anything to do with him there?
Oh, bits and pieces. Diesel was his own man, and we didn't. Yeah, we were different people.
Did you speak?
Yeah. Not as mates or anything, but yeah.
Just in the interest of the team.
Yeah.
He was a great player, Diesel, wasn't he?
He was. Certainly was.
Can you put the personal things to one side and sort of acknowledge just?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no doubt. He was limited athletically, I suppose, in a lot of ways. So he by far got the most out of himself, and was terrific football. I mean, there's no question about that. The other side. That's my opinion. Yeah,
okay. Now, we're not going to focus entirely on the blues that happened on the footy field, but the other famous one, I think, was the Dennis Banks, Rhys Jones incident at the MCG. Again, if your memory's fading, mate, let's have another look at that.
Get a headache every time I see it.
Now, that's a big hit.
Yep.
That's probably, I reckon that's 8 to 10 weeks today.
Yeah. I woke up in the room, so I was out cold then and there.
Is there a background to that?
Well, I think if you look closely, you'll see that Dennis's eye is split open. So
who did that, Rhys?
Unfortunately, I collected him a little bit earlier than that, and
with intent or accidentally?
Oh, accidentally on purpose.
Why did you get yourself into so many scraps? I mean, both these you whacked Diesel on his crook shoulder, and you've smacked Banksy and opened up his eye. I mean, did you ever think that you might have been fighting out of your division a bit? I mean, they were pretty good with their fists, weren't they?
Yeah, well, they both sneak over me too, so... Although Banksy reckons he still owes me another one, but...
No, I think he squared... Whatever he owed you, I think he squared up that day.
That was well squared up. But that was... you mentioned 8 to 10 weeks, so you got 3 weeks for that. And
3?
So sometimes it depends on who you hit.
Wow. Now, you were asleep when after Banksy whacked you. I was at the MCG just 20 metres outside the fence, and there's a woman of my acquaintance ran down the aisleway to the fence and to all intents and purposes was going to jump it to take on Banksy. You were married to her at the time.
Oh, okay. She might have been wishing I was dead.
That's a true story.
Yeah. Oh, look, it was, and that's the thing. If you play with fire, you get burned every day.
Yeah. Coming up, the Battle of Britain. Your history is a contradiction. I mean, you're a beautifully skilled player. I mean, you were like a cat. Your balance was perfect. You didn't look to be going all that quickly, but no one seemed to be able to grab you. I just think sometimes that your skills are undersold and your achievements, in the purest sense, don't get the credit they deserve.
Oh no, I think I think people realise it, and when you talk about that, I wasn't quick, so that's why I didn't look like I was going quick. But I had a pretty good knowledge of what was around me, and it was hard enough to get the ball without wasting it. So I think that's a lot of players go 100 miles an hour, and their body's going 100 miles an hour, but their mind's going 1 mile an hour, and the ball can go straight up in the air. So
2 weeks after the '87 Premiership win, the pinnacle of your footy career, you play a game offshore in London, which later was titled the Battle of Britain. What are your memories of that?
Well, not too good. I mean, I've had to watch it on YouTube and things, but we'd just won a premiership and we'd been on the drink basically for 2 weeks, and there were a lot of celebrations, Melbourne Town Hall thing, and there's something happening basically every day, and next minute we're on a plane off to London to play North Melbourne. So it was... we were there to have a good time. They were there to play football.
Tell me about your preparation the night before the game, Rhys. You into bed early, were you?
Well, it was early in the morning. It was around about 4 a.m, I think, when I got to bed the morning of the match. So, look...
When did the alarm bells ring that North Melbourne had come to play?
I think when Stephen McCann, who wasn't the bravest bloke out there, tried to put Stephen
Kernahan.
Kernahan's head in a garbage bin, I thought, they're fair dinkum, these blokes. They're on here.
Well, let's have a look, mate. Let's go back to London. There's your massive
Well,
mark.
that wasn't bad considering the amount of sleep I'd had. So, and that was Donald and...
Bang. That was lively.
That was interesting.
There were no jumping punches there. They were for real.
Well, that was, I mean, I had a headache as it was from the night before. I didn't need Donald back
Was it Donald McDonald? Yeah, because he didn't mind a stouse, did he?
No, he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
He'd pick his mark too. So,
So we know the black mark from that game was Ian Aitken having his jaw broken. But I asked you before about being scared on a footy field. Was that scary that day with the spot fires all over the ground?
Scary for Alistair Clarkson.
Yeah.
It was probably the only time I'd been given instructions to get someone.
Yeah.
And Wolsey, later that, he basically said, I don't want this bloke to walk off the ground. So,
Did he say that to everyone or just to his henchmen like you and Jimmy Buckley?
Yeah, I think he knew who was going to try and carry it out anyway. But that was, and it became farcical after a while. We were chasing him and weren't even worried about the footy. And we had the goal umpire chasing us. It was like Benny Hill at times, running around in circles. But
Was Bugsy Common your goal umpire that game?
yeah, he was. Yeah, good goal umpire.
Gee, he would have
Only
been-
had to go near the post and he'd give it a goal.
I want to quote you something from your book, Rhys, which was titled Rhys. It came in about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You did say, and there's a couple of things I want to quote you from that book. One of them was that you copped a lot more than you ever dished out. Did you mean that literally? You're on the receiving end more? Yeah.
Physically, I copped a lot better ones than I ever dished out. I never intended to hurt anyone, I suppose. It was, niggling little stuff or retaliation or whatever. So it was, just part of the way my game went.
Okay. The other thing you said in your book was that this is a direct quote. There was no doubt the use of anabolic steroids was rife in the 1980s. Have you backed down from that, or do you still stand by that?
That quote sounds a bit strong, but look, there was rumours. There was definite rumours around that.
But you did say, now, I'm not going to be pedantic with it, but you did say there was no doubt the use of anabolic steroids was rife in the 80s, which to me says you are declaring that steroids were being used by clubs.
Put it this way, I'd be very surprised if they weren't.
Okay. You did name two clubs that were the basis of your suspicions. They were Fitzroy and West Coast.
Fitzroy, in the mid '80s, they had a lot of blokes who got very big, very quick, and I don't know. I did a lot of weights and I didn't get very big, so it didn't help me.
No, I must say, I was in the media at the time and was aware of these suggestions, and certainly some strong suggestions about the rapid development of players at the West Coast.
Yeah, look, that was what happened then.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure. And it's funny because you think something would have come out by now. But it hasn't, and the truth normally comes out. So maybe they did have some ingenious weight program that I didn't know.
Peptides. Yeah. Who was the toughest bloke you played on, or the toughest bloke to beat?
Gee, it was tough. I started off, as you said, on a wing, and guys like Wayne Schimmelbusch, who just pushed himself all day, were really hard to play on. Their work rate was unbelievable, and a lot of those guys who played in the wing were very, very fit guys. And Gary Ablett.
Did you play on Gary?
Yeah, I played on Gary a couple of times, and I was lucky enough to get out unscathed. So.
Did you enjoy the show? You played okay on him, did you?
Yeah, I played him a couple of times, and that's what you try and do: put yourself up against the best and see how you go. I mean, and he was good.
Oh, go on, was he?
Yeah.
Was there a way to play him? I mean, did you employ a particular strategy because it was him?
I played it on him from behind a lot of the time, which people would say you're crazy, but I suppose a little bit of reputation and a little bit of footsteps, and especially with other players saying that they're going to get him and whatever over the course of that day. It was at Waverley, and a lot of times, he fumbled a few.
Did he?
Which was uncharacteristic.
Yeah. Why would he have fumbled, Rhys, do you think?
Oh, look, I just think the players and the...
Is that because of this intimidation aspect?
He was going to cop it over the course of that day. And I played on him one other time, and I must admit I thought, it might be good to get in his ear before, during a game we played at Princess Park, and he was so quick off the mark, and a couple of times he led, and I thought I'll mention that he had 10 or 15 on me that time. Why aren't they kicking the ball to me? And kicking the ball to you. And so I started putting a few ideas in his head, thinking if I can get him thinking and get his mind off football, then probably the best way to do it.
One last one. The funniest moment in your tribunal history. Is there one?
It wasn't real funny in there.
No, well, there's some
look,
times
after the Battle of Britain, we actually we had a tribunal. I think there was 5 or 6 Carlton players and probably 4 or 5 North Melbourne players, and we'd been out to lunch that day, Jimmy Buckley and Wayne Johnson and myself, and we'd all been.
This
reported.
is back here,
back in Melbourne, yeah. And Ian Collins and Ron Joseph were in there arguing the case, so we actually sent out for a box of Crownies and sat in the tribunal room and polished off a box of Crownies. And before we got in there, it was 2 hours they were arguing for. So
how many were in the box of Crownies?
24.
24. So
I think
real
there's
box, yeah.
There's 3 of us having a good crack, and
that's a good crack,
and a few others just having 1 or 2.
Nice work. Hey, Rhys, I did genuinely love watching you play. I mean, I saw you come in because you came in with a fanfare at South, and it was, this kid was going to go a long way. And you did lots of highlights, and hopefully today we've squared the ledger a bit between Rhys, the hit merchant, and Rhys, the footballer. And the footballer was very, very good.
There was never a dull moment, Mike.
There wasn't, mate. Good to see you, mate.
Thanks.
This has been a Fox Footy production for Fox Sports.